Is not working. So what I'm going to do, since I've already wasted enough time and your time as well, I'm just going to read the article from straight from my browser, and we can just talk about it that way. So, all right, let's get into this. So this is a Crisis at Marvel. It was written by Tatiana Siegel, November 1st, 2023. Crisis at Marvel, Jonathan Majors, backup plans, the Marvels, reshoots, reviving original Avengers, and more issues revealed. And this is reference from last year, November. This past September, a group of Marvel creators, including studio chief Kevin Feige, assembled in Palm Springs for the studio's annual retreat. Most years, the vibe would be confident, even cocky, given how the premier superhero brand owned by Disney since 2009 has remade the entertainment business in its image. Where did I go? Where did that go? But this occasion was angst ridden. Everyone at Marvel was reeling from a series of disappointments, on screen and legal scandal involving one of its biggest stars, and questions about the viability of the studio's ambitious strategy to extend the brand beyond movies into streaming. The most pressing issue to be discussed at the retreat was what to do about Jonathan Majors, the actor who had been poised to carry the next phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but instead is headed into a high-profile trial in New York later this month on domestic violence charges. The actor insists he is a victim, but the damage to his reputation and the chance he could lose his case has forced Marvel to reconsider its plans to center the next phase of its interlocking slate of sequels, spin-offs, and series around Major's villainous character, Kang the Conqueror. Now, as many of you guys are aware, his trial came and went. He was found guilty. I don't know that much about the specifics, so I'm not going to comment on it. However, I've heard of some, contradicting, or I shouldn't say contradicting, but more hypocritical criticism around Disney regarding, the hiring of actors who may have already have been convicted felons, or, whatever it may be. But, if you look deeper into Disney and, not Marvel, but Disney in specifically, then you'll be aware of a lot of their, grooming, grooming, MK Ultra practices, child trafficking practices, allegedly. Mind you, these are all alleged accusations towards Disney as a whole. So if you're curious about those things, I highly recommend you do some personal digging. But there is a trail there to be set, I'm sure. If you looked at some of the scandals that happened with Nickelodeon, then you would not be too surprised to know that Disney is not far from the table. Allegedly. And also, let's not keep in mind a lot of the recent arrests of Disney employees and the consumption and acquisition of CP. And I think many of you are well aware of what that is. But let's continue. At the gathering in Palm Springs, executives discussed backup plans, including pivoting to another comic book adversary like Doctor Doom. But making any shift could carry its own headaches. Majors was already a big presence in the MCU, including as the scene-stealing antagonist in February's Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Yeah, I'm sure. And he has been positioned as the franchise next big thing in the season of Loki, particularly in the final, which airs November 9th, and sets up Kang as the titular star of a fifth Avengers film. 26. Now, I don't know who watched Loki. I heard the numbers were terrible. And Ant-Man and the Wasp was just as terrible and had a lot of communist overtones to it, but that's a whole nother conversation. Quote, Marvel is truly fucked with the whole Kang angle, says one top dealer who has seen the final Loki episode, and they haven't had an opportunity to rewrite until very recently because of the WGA strike. But I don't see a path to how they move forward with him. Beyond the bad press for majors, the brain trust in Marvel is also grappling with November's release of The Marvels, and we all know how well that turned out. A sequel to 2019's blockbuster Captain Marvel. That has been plagued with lengthy reshoots and now appears to likely to underwhelm at the box office. Yeah, that's an understatement. This is all unprecedented and turn of fortune for a company that has enjoyed a nearly uninterrupted string of hits ever since it started independently, producing its movies with 2008's Iron Man. That widely profitable run culminated in a $2.8 billion success of 2009's Avengers Endgame, a high water mark for the studio that has earned nearly $30 billion over 32 films. Replicating that kind of phenomena is never easy. However, never easy. Well, to quote the great, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you've done that to yourselves. This was all by design. You decided, Marvel, you decided to do this to yourself. You could have easily recaptured that exact same phenomenon, but you chose not to. You chose to go with your cultural Marxist agenda. The whole phrase, go woke, go broke. And who's that on? You've spent a better part of this half decade blaming the fans. I don't know of any, Marvel hardcore fans who grew up in the 70s reading the comics, who advocated and wanted their characters to practice Marxism or Nazism. And I'm talking about you, Captain America, when you were apparently a Hydra agent the entire time. So, you've done this to yourself. You could have easily recaptured this phenomenon, but you decided not to. There's no one else to blame but yourself. However, the source of Marvel's current troubles can be traced back to 2020. That's when the COVID pandemic ushered in a mandate to help boost Disney's stock price with an endless torrent of interconnected Marvel content for the studio's fledgling streaming platform, Disney Plus. You mean the same one that Bob Iger created? The same one that Bob Iger left Disney right before the COVID pandemic and then came back just in time for the COVID pandemic to end? Okay, gotcha. The same Bob Iger who put in place the plans and the decisions for the future of Marvel Studios and under the reigns of Kevin Feige. Okay. I'm just making sure I'm on the right page here. According to the plan, there would never be a lapse in superhero fare, with either a film in theaters or a new television series at any given moment. Yeah, when they're good. But the ensuing tsunami of spandex proved to be too much of a good thing, and the demands of churning out so much programming taxed the Marvel apparatus. Nobody asked for that. No fans asked for you guys to churn out Marvel, no one asked for that. No fans were asking for you to just turn Marvel Studios into Marvel content. No one asked for that. You decided that all on your own. Moreover, the need to tease out an interwoven storyline over so many desperate shows, movies, and platforms created a muddled narrative that baffled viewers. Yeah, exactly, because no one asked for that. You decided to muddy the waters with not only completely rewriting and changing characters, but then also completely rewriting and changing established narratives and storylines that were in the comics that would be easily be able to translate into films and TV shows with little tweaks here and there. But for some odd reason, you decided to create you decided to create content with established characters, lore, and canon. That's not how it works. Quote, the Marvel machine was pumping out a lot of content. See, there's the word. Did it get to the point where there was just too much? And they were burning people out on superheroes? It's possible, says Wall Street analyst Eric Handler, who covers Disney. Quote, the more you do, the tougher it is to maintain quality. That's not true. They tried experimenting with breaking in some new characters like Shang-Chi, The Eternals, with mixed results. There were zero results. Those movies bombed. With budgets as big as these, you need home runs. Yeah, with budgets, we'll talk about those budgets in a second. See, no one asked for a Shang-Chi movie. The Eternals, no one asked for it, but had you made the Eternals look like the characters they were in the comics, if you respected the lore and the world of the Eternals, it's like, and gave it to a competent director and writer, like you used to do back in the day, people would love it. Shang-Chi, you should have given that to one. You should have cast an actual martial artist for the lead role. You could have, instead of screwing over Louis Tron for Iron Fist, you should have gave him the role of Shang-Chi. There were countless really great martial art actors you could have literally given the role of Shang-Chi to. And you could have literally hired the stunt coordinators for like the show Into the Badlands, or for what's it called? Warrior? I think it was on Max, but now it's going on Netflix. The Raid crew, could have hired them. Imagine if you hired the director of The Raid and his stunt choreography crew, and you found a really good, talented martial artist to play Shang-Chi, who's also an actor. You would have had an amazing film. Amazing film. It didn't need all the phantasm and giant lions and all that other crap. It needed to be about a martial artist dealing with his father. You need to keep those kind of stories small. You should have looked at if you wanted to make a fantastical, martial art film, you needed to take inspiration from good fantasy martial art films. Some of the old school ones that like Jet Li did. Jet Li did a lot of really cool fantasy martial art films. The epic Monkey King series that China has. Check that stuff out. But they didn't want to like take the inspiration of actual cultures that would actually make these shows good, and actually actually do it in a respectful manner and not in the white liberal racist manner. But that's a whole nother conversation. Quote, The Marvels, which opens in theaters November 10th, will struggle to get the ball past the infield. Aquaman 2 did better than The Marvels, at least by Marvel's oversized standards. The movie, which cost $250 million and sees Brie Larson reprising her role as Captain Marvel, is tracking to open to $75 million to $80 million, far below the $185 million Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of crap took in domestically in its debut weekend last year. 250 million for that movie, and it had PS3 graphics. I'm convinced that the FTX scandal, the whole FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried, and him, essentially funneling money to Democratic donors and investors and politicians and corporations that are more democratically aligned, like Disney. I'm convinced it was Disney. I'm convinced that Disney is just one big money laundering corporation, and FTX was the hands that washed the money laundering for Disney, among other corporations and celebrities and what have you. But I'm convinced at this point that Disney is just one big, large money laundering operation, among other things, very nefarious and unethical and terrible. But generally, it's a money laundering company. I mean, look at how much it cost for the Dial of Destiny and how crappy of a film that was. I didn't see it, but I saw clips and I'm like, what is this? This is terrible. Looks terrible. So I'm convinced that these are all money laundering films, because how can the Marvels cost 250 million, but the CGI is like CGI that CGI in like cutscenes in PS5 films, PS5 games, or PS2. It's really weird. Well, not weird. It's just it's corrupt. That's pretty much it. I mean, has Hollywood made any really good films anymore? I mean, it's just one big money laundering scheme. Do y'all remember? Do you remember when the movie with Brad Pitt, that zombie movie? I can't remember the name of that zombie movie that he did. But did you know that at one point the set for that film got raided because there was a guy that was trafficking real guns on the set of that movie? So if come on now. If they're willing to traffic guns on movie sets, they're willing to just money launder away all of their financial endeavors and what have you. So that's just something to keep in mind, ladies and gents. But let's continue. Alright. Directed by Nia DaCosta, The Marvels unites Larson's heroine with two superpowered allies. Tiana Paris, Monica Rambeau, introduced in WandaVision, and Iman Vellani's Kamala Khan, the Marvel series. But instead of seamlessly building on the success of Captain Marvel, there was no success in Captain Marvel. That's a lie. That was just riding off of the wave of Avengers Infinity War. This movie resulted in 4 weeks of reshoots to bring coherence to a tangled story. Then the eyebrows were raised again when DaCosta began working on another film. While The Marvels was still in post-production, the filmmaker moved to London earlier this year to begin prepping for Tessa Thompson's drama Hedda. A representative for DaCosta declined to comment. Yeah, and then you had Bob Iger telling all those people during that conference that she needed more supervision from the Red Whites executives, which I mean is slightly racist, I guess, in some regards, but this is Disney we're talking about, so racism does not fall far from their shooting star. Quote, if you're directing a $250 million money laundering movie, it's kind of weird for the director to leave with a few months to go, a source familiar with the production. Well, when you hear her talk about how she pretty much didn't, shoot this film and that it was 3 years of her life she'll never get back, I mean, this is pretty much a Kevin Feige film. Everyone knows that. These directors are diversity hires. They're, DIE quotas, and that's all DaCosta is. She's just a DIE hire. I hardly doubt any of her films are even that good. As you've noticed, Marvel Studios and DC, all of these, they hire, DIE quotas, that are not talented, that are not experienced, that are not skilled, and then this is what you get. And while the whole thing crumbles, they're just money laundering and circle jerking each other off in the background. The Marvels has since its release date moved back twice to once to swap places with Quantumania, which was deemed further along, and again when its debut shifted from July to November to give the filmmakers more time to tinker. But that extra time didn't necessarily help. In June, Marvel, which traditionally only solicits feedback from Disney employees, and their friends and families, took the uncharacteristic step of holding a public test screening in Texas. The audience gave the film middling reviews. But Marvel has never been in the business of being average. Kevin Feige's real superpower, his genius, has always been in post-production and getting his hands on movies and making sure they are finished strongly, the source adds. I'm sure that at one point that may have been true. These days he's spread thin. Feige declined to comment for this story. Yeah, I'm sure he really wanted to share his thoughts. Spread thin? No, that man is just so far up his own ass. That's pretty much all it is. Feige isn't the only person showing signs of strain. Marvel's entire VFX battalion, which was tortured and harassed under, what was that Argentinian commie's name? I can't remember her name. Miss Namor. Miss Namor. I can't remember her name. Pascal? No. I'm thinking Pedro Pascal. That's funny. Well, that's another commie. But anyways, let's continue. This past February, when the credits rolled at the world premiere of Quantumania, shock rippled through the Regency Village Theater in Westwood over some shoddy CGI. There were at least 10 scenes where the visual effects had been added at the last minute and were out of focus, says one veteran power broker who was there. It was insane. I've never seen something like that in my entire career. Everyone was talking about it. Even the kids of executives were talking about it. Yeah. How do you think we feel? How do you think we feel when we spend nearly $50 to $100 at the movies and we get a 2.5-hour film of poopy CGI and even terrible writing and even horrible and even worse acting? The scheduled wrap with the Marvels had left the Ant-Man sequel in a squeeze, pushing its post-production schedule by 4.5 months. Marvel films are known for coming down to the wire. Given Feige's ability to foam the runaway and land a plane that way, says one executive familiar with how the company operates. But this level of unfinished was unprecedented and would be noted in scathing reviews when the tentpole with $200 million budget opened 11 days after the premiere. Critics weren't the only ones dismayed. Fed up with the 14-hour days and no overtime, Marvel VFX workers voted unanimously to unionize in September, sparking an industry-wide trend. $200 million. I'm telling you, it's just money. These films are just one big money laundering scheme. Quote, "The year is 2023 was the straw that broke the camel's back," says former Marvel Studio VFX Assistant Coordinator Anna George, who appeared before the Congressional Labor Caucus on October 19th to testify about the studio's unattainable deadlines and working conditions. The pay and long hours at Marvel were the reasons we had to start unionizing process there. The conditions were completely unsustainable. Yeah, otherwise they would have to put nets outside of the studios for when all of the VFX workers decide to exit stage left. Just like the Foxconn over in China. Disney's top brass, including newly returned CEO Bob Iger, 2 shower a day Bob Iger, was said to be apologetic about Marvel VFX troubles. No, he isn't. 1 month after the Quantumania premiere debacle, the guillotine fell on, there she is, Victoria Alonso, who oversaw the studio's physical production, post-production, VFX, and animation, while the reason cited for her abrupt firing was her unauthorized role as executive producer on the Oscar-nominated film Argentina 1985. Insiders say Disney was incensed that quality control on its Marvel productions was plummeting, particularly on the ever-expanding TV front. VFX logjam had been evident for some time, with some final effects for such Disney Plus series as WandaVision and She-Hulk Attorney at Law, inserted after their streaming debuts. That Alonso was busy promoting her art house project while Rome burned certainly didn't sit well with Disney's leadership. Alonso's attorney says her client is unable to comment. Yeah, that's what that NDA is all about. And that buy-off. Yeah, she definitely was a very cultural Marxist leech that ruined a lot of stuff. But in the end, it all falls down to Kevin Feige and Bob 2-shower Iger. But some internal sources suggest, and if you're wondering why I call him Bob 2-shower Iger, is because in a report that came out about him, he would take a midday shower before he'd go about his business. So for that, I call him Bob 2-shower Iger. She-Hulk, but some internal sources suggest Alonso was a scapegoat and point to the She-Hulk VFX issues as a symptom of a deeper rot, namely a lack of oversight in script development. In the original arc of She-Hulk, a flashback of star Tatiana Mansley's transformation into her Hulk character didn't place until episode 8. The perpetual episode, but after Marvel's Brain Trust watched footage, it realized the scene needed to happen in the pilot episode so that audiences could see more of the character's backstory earlier. That meant that the VFX team was tasked with fixing the mess in post-production. Oh, Jesus. The so-called bad VFX we see was because of half-baked scripts, says one person involved with She-Hulk. This is not Victoria. This is Kevin. And even above Kevin, those issues should be addressed in pre-production. The timeline is not allowing the Marvel executives to sit with the material. All the while, Marvel was bleeding money with a single episode of She-Hulk, costing some $25 million, dwarfing the budget of a final season of the episode's Game of Thrones. But without a similar zeitgeist bang, the August 2022 series premiere in El Capitan Theater foreshadowed what was to come 6 months later in the Quantumania bow. The She-Hulk special effects were out of focus in multiple scenes. The whole show is out of focus. How about that? There are signs that the flood of product is leading people to tune out. Quote, I'm not prepared to call it a permanent fall, but based on the numbers that go with Marvel's podcast, Marvel-based articles, friends who do Marvel-based video coverage, all these numbers are significantly down, says Joanna Robinson, co-author of the New York Times bestseller, The MCU, The Reign of Marvel Studios, who is a writer and podcaster at The Ringer. The quality is suffering. In 2019, at the peak, you put Marvel Studios in front of something, people were like, oh, that brand means quality. That association is no longer the case because there have been so many projects that felt half-baked and undercooked. And when you hire cultural Marxists, that's what happens. It is what it is, right? You hire DEI, cultural Marxists, and this is what you get. It's not woke, people. This is cultural Marxism. So anyone who's calling it woke, they're not using the terminology right. This is cultural Marxism. And just terrible quality. As public criticism mounts, Feige is pulling the plug on scripts and projects that aren't working. Case in point, the Blade reboot with Mashal Ali signed on for an eponymous role of a vampire. Things looked promising for a 2023 release date, but the project has gone through at least 5 writers and 2 directors, and one shut down 6 weeks before production. One person familiar with the script permutations say the story at one point morphed into a narrative led by women and filled with life lessons. Blade was relegated to the 4th lead, a bizarre idea considering that the studio had a 2-time Oscar winner Ali on board. That's the MCU. That's that cultural Marxism for you. It's not woke. That's cultural Marxism. Amid reports that Ali was ready to exit over script issues, he should have. Feige went back to the drawing board and hired Michael Green, the Oscar-nominated writer of Logan, to start anew. Speculation around town is that the studio is looking to make the film, now slated for 2025, on a budget of less than $100 million, a deviation from Marvel's big spending strategy. Yeah, well, they got to ease up on their money laundering. I get it. With Iger publicly acknowledging the downside of Marvel TV, glut that diluted focus and attention, the keepers of the comic book empire are considering some dramatic moves. Sources say that there have been talks to bring back the original gang for an Avengers movie. This would include reviving Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man and Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow, both whom were killed off in Endgame. Desperation. That shouldn't be a stumbling block. In comic books, beloved characters are often killed off only to be resurrected thanks to the power of things like the multiverse. Oh, yeah, that worked out really well for Quantumania. But the studio hasn't yet committed to the idea. If it were able to bring those actors back, it wouldn't come cheap. Sources say Downey's upfront salary for Iron Man 3 was around $25 million. Yeah, well, that guy at this point looks like the decrepitated man. All that vegan food, just eating twigs and berries and moss. It ain't good for Iron Man. Will that solve Marvel's Majors problems? When the Quantumania actor was arrested in March, Disney executives insisted that they could afford to play a wait-and-see game given that Avengers: The Kang Dynasty wasn't expected to begin shooting until early 2024. But then Majors was dropped in quick succession by his publicists and managers. He was already fired. We already know that. He remains a client at WME, the agency where he landed after CAA partnered with ways with him pre-arrest for his brutal conduct towards staff, says one source. CAA declined to comment. In April, other alleged domestic violence victims of Majors been cooperating with Manhattan District Attorney's Office. Then, ahead of a key hearing in October, media outlets including Variety obtained court filings. That's old news at this point. A studio source notes that regardless of the actor's legal issues, Marvel had already considered moving away from Majors-led phase because of the box office performance of Quantumania. No, it's because of the allegations that came out. It's no different than Justin Roiland. The allegations came out. He got fired, lost his show, lost everything. The next thing you know, it turns out the woman was lying. But anywho's, that's that case, not Majors. So, here, recasting Majors is an option. And someone asked John Boyega, and he responded with Donkey from Shrek, saying no. And I think there was a bit of a double meaning there. Okay, but let's see. Let me scroll through here anymore, see if we got anything. Okay, here we go. The key to reinvigorating Marvel may lie with the superhero arsenal that Disney acquired during its 2019 purchase of 21st Century. That deal brought several blue chip heroes such as X-Men and the Fantastic Four back under the studio's control. Already fans are geeking out about the next year's Deadpool, the year after that, which unites Ryan Reynolds' Merc with a mouth with Hugh Jackman, Wolverine, and a reboot of Fantastic Four slated for 2025. As a bonus, the Fox editions gave Feige the opportunity to reimagine the X-Men franchise. Oh, that always, anytime you hear reimagine, you know what that means. Cultural Marxism. The very property he cut his teeth as a young executive at Lawrence Struller Daughters production company. Now that the WGA strike is in the rearview mirror, Marvel has started talking to writers about bringing the X-Men into the MCU fold. While Feige recalibrates the rest of the industry, is anxiously hoping that Marvel's best days are not behind it. Writing the Marvel obituary would be ill-advised, says Jason Squire, Professor Emeritus at USC School of Cinematic Arts and host the Movie Business Podcast. Kevin Feige is the Babe Ruth of movie executives, and Marvel has the most profitable track record in movie history. No question. Yeah, I think that's a load of BS. This is a Marvel obituary. That Marvel Review best-selling book was the obituary. The article exposing Bob Iger and his 2 showers a day is an obituary. Everything that Florida has done to Disney is an obituary. This is an obituary. We are in the obituary age of Disney, and that's just a fact of the matter. So I don't know how. I don't really think that there's any real way for Marvel Studios to move forward. We know what we've heard the rumors of what they plan to do with the X-Men. Making it female centric, because I don't have a problem with that if it was led by Storm, who led the X-Men in the comics. She is an important character. But if you're going to turn it into the MCU, which we all know it's going to be, then there's no real point in investing in it. The Fantastic Four, we've already heard the rumors. Storm is going to be the main focus. We've heard rumors that they're going to turn Mr. Fantastic into the marker, which is just... I don't know what they're thinking of doing. It doesn't sound good, any of it. And it's, and why I'm calling it it should be Marvel Cultural Marxist Studios, because they're just pushing propaganda. They're pushing this cultural this Marxist agenda. Nothing good, nothing positive is coming from it. Like I said, I'm convinced they're just a big money laundering corporation at this point. And I really think FTX scandal really exposed that in regards to Disney. I know people are excited for Deadpool 3, but if it's good, cool. If it's okay, well, oh well. You have that Echo TV show that no one's going to watch, and I've seen clips of it, or I should say I've seen the trailers, and I'm like, the girl's weight fluctuates throughout the entire trailer, and I hear it's because they kept on doing reshoots, and they wanted to cancel it, but they couldn't. So, in my mind, honestly, after Avengers Endgame, they should have just stopped for 10 years, 5 years, not make anything, and just plan out the next phase. But by design, I would say, many of the plans that were set in motion, I'm not going to get into all the conspiracies of it all right now, but, needless to say, this is it for Marvel Studios, for Disney Marvel. The comics are dead. The reputation is dead. There's nothing else left for them. And I feel for anyone who still is holding out hope for the future of Marvel Studios, because it's not going to go well for you. and they're not going to stop. If the Pandaverse episode tells you anything you need to know about the state of Lucasfilm, then you know that is exactly what it's going to be like at Marvel Studios. Kevin Feige said that himself. So, I don't know why people are trying to, well, we know why the corporate media is doing this. They suck off the taint of Disney because they get, paid by Disney. But you just have a lot of delusion. Those people like, John Campia and things like that, those kind of crews and reviewers, they're not genuine. For them, it's all about the content. It's all about the numbers, the money. But then you have other people out there like Neurotic and Ryan and, all those people, Valiant, Midnight's Edge, Chris Gore, all those are the other side of it. I should say the other side of the, cultural Marxist war that is, calling all of this stuff out and trying to support the fans in, the collapse of their favorite IPs and characters. So, I just hope that, this gives the opportunities for new creators to really show their stuff. We have the Ripperverse comic book series, which is, it's expanding and blowing up and developing a great community around it. Say what you will about Rebel Moon. I liked it. Was it campy and cheesy and had a pretty terrible script? Yeah, but I still enjoyed it. It's something different. I know it copies Warhammer 40K. I get all that stuff. I'm not here for all of that, but I look at it as like finally something that isn't just looks like Marvel. That isn't just, content. It's not content. And I think a lot of us out there are tired of just experiencing content. We want stories. We want characters. We want life lessons that are resonating with us as individuals, not as propaganda. And I think many of us out there would feel a lot more better about it and would be more willing to go to the movies. Other than that, we're all going to wait a month to 3 weeks until it comes out onto a streaming platform, because there's no point in wasting our money at the movie theaters for a movie that doesn't even respect its own audience. I think many of us out there can agree and resonate with that. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Lounge Rōnin. All things, everything. I apologize about the technical difficulties earlier on, but I'll make sure to have that squared away for next episode. So until next time, stay positive, stay focused, stay true, and much love.